A massive legal bombshell just exploded that's sending shockwaves through Washington, and gun grabbers are absolutely losing their minds. Federal courts just ruled that decades of suppressor and short-barreled rifle tax restrictions are completely unconstitutional. And what happens next will change everything. The Biden administration is scrambling, anti-gun politicians are panicking, and this could be the biggest Second Amendment victory in modern history. But here's what nobody's talking about. The implications go way beyond just these items. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because this story is developing fast and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming next. The historic court ruling that changes everything. 3 federal circuit courts simultaneously delivered coordinated rulings that have completely dismantled the government's authority to impose tax barriers on constitutional rights. The 5th, 6th, and 11th circuits all reached identical conclusions using the Supreme Court's Buren standard, finding that the $200 tax stamp requirement has no historical precedent in American law. What makes this unprecedented is that these courts didn't just rule on individual cases. They issued broad injunctions that immediately affect all pending applications nationwide. The legal reasoning specifically states that any fee-based licensing system for items in common lawful use violates the Second Amendment's core protections. This coordinated approach suggests months of behind-the-scenes legal coordination that caught the federal government completely off guard. The most shocking part is that these judges essentially declared the entire NFA taxation system a criminal conspiracy against constitutional rights. The shocking numbers nobody expected. The court proceedings revealed government data that will absolutely stun you about how widespread these items really are. ATF records show there are currently 4.9 million registered suppressors and 6.2 million registered short-barreled rifles in civilian hands across America. Even more shocking, these numbers only represent items that went through the federal registration process, meaning millions more exist in legal gray areas or were manufactured before certain regulations took effect. The courts found that with over 11 million of these items in circulation, they clearly meet the common use standard established by Supreme Court precedent. The government actually tried to argue that these high numbers justified more restrictions, but the judges used their own evidence to prove the opposite point entirely. What will blow your mind is that the ATF's own data proves suppressors are more common than many standard hunting rifles. State governments in complete chaos. The immediate aftermath has created a constitutional crisis as state governments scramble to figure out what laws they can still enforce. Texas and Florida have already announced they're treating the ruling as immediately effective and won't assist federal authorities with any registration enforcement. California and New York are maintaining their state-level bans while acknowledging they can't collect federal taxes, creating a bizarre legal patchwork. Pennsylvania's Attorney General issued emergency guidance to law enforcement, stating they should treat suppressors like regular firearm accessories pending further legal developments. Most shocking of all, Connecticut has quietly suspended enforcement of their state-level SBR restrictions, effectively admitting their laws can't survive the new constitutional analysis. The truly unbelievable part is that even anti-gun governors are privately instructing their attorneys general to avoid defending these restrictions in court. The ATF's desperate damage control strategy. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has implemented emergency protocol changes that reveal just how panicked they are about this ruling. Processing times for pending applications have been slashed from 8 to 12 months down to 2 to 3 weeks as they rush to clear backlogs before potential further legal challenges. Internal ATF memos leaked to congressional offices show they're reassigning over 200 agents from other duties to handle the massive influx of applications following the tax elimination. The agency has also quietly updated their examination procedures, removing several previously required documentation steps that legal experts say were likely unconstitutional under the new standard. Most telling of all, they've stopped defending the tax requirement in pending court cases, essentially conceding the constitutional argument. What's absolutely mind-blowing is that ATF agents are reportedly being instructed to approve applications they would have previously denied. Economic earthquake in the firearms industry. The market response has been absolutely explosive, with some manufacturers reporting 400% increases in orders within just 2 weeks of the ruling. Suppressor prices have dropped by an average of $150 to $200 immediately, with entry-level models now available for under $250 compared to $450 plus, including tax just months ago. Silencer Co., one of the largest manufacturers, announced emergency production increases and is hiring 150 new employees to meet unprecedented demand. The ripple effects extend beyond just manufacturers. Firearms retailers are restructuring their entire business models as items that required special licensing and lengthy wait times can now be sold like regular accessories. Industry analysts predict the suppressor market alone will grow from $1.2 billion to over $3.5 billion within the next 2 years. The shocking reality is that suppressor sales in 1 month post-ruling exceeded the entire previous year's totals. What this means for every other gun law. Here's the part that has anti-gun politicians absolutely terrified. The legal framework established in these rulings creates a roadmap for challenging virtually every federal firearms restriction. The court specifically rejected the government's authority to create bureaucratic barriers through licensing fees, waiting periods, and registration requirements for items in common use. Second Amendment lawyers are already filing challenges to federal licensing requirements, state permit systems, and even aspects of the background check system using identical legal reasoning. The implications extend to assault weapon bans, magazine capacity restrictions, and concealed carry licensing schemes in restrictive states. Legal experts predict we'll see a cascade of successful challenges over the next 18 months as this precedent gets applied to other restrictions. What's absolutely staggering is that anti-gun organizations are quietly advising politicians to stop defending certain laws because they're now unwinnable in court. The government's next move and timeline. The Biden administration faces an impossible choice that will define their approach to gun rights for the remainder of their term. They can appeal directly to the Supreme Court, risking a broader ruling that could eliminate even more restrictions, or accept the lower court decisions and try to salvage what's left of the regulatory framework. Intelligence from Department of Justice sources suggests they're leaning toward a compromise strategy, eliminating the tax while maintaining registration requirements and arguing that paperwork alone doesn't constitute an unconstitutional burden. However, legal scholars point out that several circuit courts have already signaled skepticism about any registration requirements for items in common use. The timeline is critical. The government has 45 days to decide on Supreme Court appeals, while the tax elimination takes effect immediately in affected circuits. Meanwhile, congressional Republicans are preparing legislation to make these changes permanent and extend them nationwide, setting up a major political battle heading into the election season. The most shocking development is that some Democrat lawmakers are privately suggesting their party should abandon gun control as a campaign issue entirely. This nationwide victory is just the beginning of a legal avalanche that will reshape gun rights across America. The next few months will bring game-changing developments that could eliminate restrictions you never thought possible. Smash that subscribe button and hit notifications right now because you cannot afford to miss what's coming next. Share this with every gun owner you know. They need to see this immediately.